Hi! What? I'm mad about it too. Why, hello again, endurance nerds. Here we are again, Zwift Academy Road 2022, day 1. You can see I'm all dialed up for you right off the bike. I even went through the extraordinary effort of wiping the boogers out of my nose before I got on camera. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. And thumbs up for scumbaggery. If you so please, you can go ahead and poke fun in the comments below at this hot mess here. Yuck! Anyway, let's talk baseline ride. First, just a quick overview. We're doing Climbers Gabnet. It's available every hour on the hour right now, and late join is available, but I wouldn't really recommend it because the first segment is probably somewhere between 6 and 10 minutes in, depending how quickly you're going to go on the course. So unless you're joining a minute or two late, I wouldn't recommend late join, but it does let you join up to about 35 minutes late. I'm not really sure where it's going to put you, usually with the front group, so if you can't make it within the first 5 minutes of the ride, just wait until the next hour. Now, let's talk about Zwift being Zwift. In typical Zwift fashion, they stumbled out of the gate yet again.
Same old shit, different day.
Many of you watching this video, mostly my European friends, are 50 shades of pissed off at the poor execution of the baseline ride in the beginning. Now, to their credit, they did remedy the issue, but it was too little too late for a lot of you. So let's back up and talk about the format of the ride. I talked about in my overview video that the baseline ride in 2022 diverged from 2021 and that it was going to add a lot more substance to mostly on-screen prompts, letting you know what the deliverables of the ride were and then also letting you know when the segments were coming up. Last year, people had to read the description. People don't read the novel in the description. They just don't care enough. They just want to get on and ride, so people were racing the entire course. There was a ton of confusion. Ugh. Anyway, this year it was supposed to be fixed with a lot of on-screen prompts. That was going to solve a lot of the pain on these rides. And I had mentioned in my overview video that I wasn't quite sure what the implementation was going to look like, because at that point it was 100% impossible for them to put text overlay on just a standard group ride. The on-screen text has always been tied to a ZWO file, which was tied to basically a workout graph in the back end. How were they going to do this with a group ride? I had suspected it had something to do with the workout mode, and then a couple of weeks later, Zwift ended up announcing a series of forthcoming updates in Q3 and Q4, and I will be discussing some of those as we go through the coming weeks. But one that's germane to the baseline ride was something called route-based workouts. The workouts, kind of like it sounds, were going to be based around the routes and the segments therein versus just a standard graph saying hold X number of watts for X number of minutes. So it's pretty compelling. It's a different way of getting a high level of execution or practicing different power executions or climbing repeats or whatever you're going to do on the day. And I had assumed when I heard that announcement that this was how they were getting around the execution for Zwift Academy Road. And that's precisely what they're doing. They're doing these route-based workouts that allows the text overlay and for the riders to actually be in workout mode, but the text overlay can actually be tied to your area on the course on Zwift. Now, for those of you who missed this, where did they stumble out of the gate? Well, there's an option when it comes to group workouts that is almost always toggled on, and that is to band the riders together. It keeps people together, which is much more social. People can be next to each other, and it's just a little bit more fun when you're just doing a group workout, even though people would technically be going a different speed, to keep everyone together. Well, for the baseline ride, it's not going to work. Now, I probably should know this, and I don't. I've never gone out of the way to look this up. I am not 100% certain as to what Zwift does algorithmically to generate the speed of the blob for group workouts against the riders on the road. I know it doesn't follow the fastest person on the road, and it doesn't follow the slowest person on the road. If you've done group workouts in the past, you'll know that your speed on the road with a group for a workout could be much faster or much slower than you would see if you were riding the same workout alone on the same terrain. I've noticed that I generally get a speed benefit on the flats for a group workout, but I end up losing my ass on the climbs because I don't have particularly high raw wattage, but I am well above average when it comes to watts per kilogram. So my climbing times are much slower when I'm on a group workout. Usually when you're on a group workout, it doesn't much matter. except when you're on the baseline ride, when you want to actually compare your segment times from baseline to finish line ride. When they band everybody together, everybody's time gets screwed. I would be so mad if I was going to that first Titans Grove reverse segment, knowing that I was going to target somewhere between 90 seconds and 2 minutes, and knowing pretty close to how much power I can execute for that period of time. Just to find out the group was trending towards 2 minutes and 30 seconds, my power would start to drop off precipitously because I would have gone out too hard. hard. I would have been really pissed off, and I know a lot of you were, that tried to do this on day one. And I'm really disappointed in Zwift that they stumbled out of the gate on this, and they didn't catch it for several hours. Now, I understand that Zwift operates on Pacific time. However, this is Zwift Academy Road. This is the most popular event series that you have on the platform. I know they have offices in London. They ended up getting the issue repaired somewhere around 3:30-ish my time, which is Eastern Daylight Time, which is too late for those of you in the European time zones that are jumping on your rides after work or after dinner who already got screwed by the time this fix was in place. Now, in terms of office hours for the Pacific time zone, assuming between 8 and they would have gotten fixed around noon, it took them roughly 4 hours on their time to get it fixed, plus the people who were on much earlier than the American Pacific time zone. I'm glad they fixed it on day one. It's much better and much more agile than they've been in the past, but this is just another stumble. And what I'm really kind of getting myself hung up on, and I don't know this for sure, I think it was intentional. Not to screw people over, but I actually think somebody thought that keeping people banded together was a good idea, so that everybody was executing their highest level of power for the same period of time. In theory, that works, but if you're going to do that, then you may as well just do it in a workout mode. Do some kind of 2.5-minute free ride on the workout graph. Do not do it on the segment where people are not getting the proper return for the segment. If you're going to measure segments, you have to measure them based on time, not based on everybody goes the same speed and just put out as many watts as you can for that period of time. We're not going to tell you what that period of time is. I swear sometimes they let developers put out these ideas and they don't talk to people who actually train. They don't talk to actual cyclists in terms of execution. This could have just been an oversight. I don't know. They listened to the community. They got things fixed rather quickly, pretty much as soon as they were able to get things turned around from the forums and get things updated in the system. I feel like, again, that's a pretty simple toggle just to turn those off for all the forthcoming rides, but just another disappointment coming from Zwift. At least for the remainder of the 4 weeks, people will have a better experience. Now, the second issue I saw raised was with respect to the emails. As of the time of making this video, about 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I got off my ride at 6 p.m., did a little bit of an extension, and then jumped off to start filming. This has not yet been remedied. I say that because I haven't received an email at all, but what people were getting was just a blank form email. So it gave all the information like, hey, this is your phenotype, and then nothing was written there. You can go into the Zwift Companion app and you can see your times, and if you did these courses last year, you can make some comparisons there. But I think the reason I haven't gotten an email yet is because they are going back to fix whatever it was pulling from. It was not getting the proper data. Hopefully those emails will be remedied for those people who were on the earlier rides, as well as those people who were on the rides post-repair, but I would not be surprised if I didn't see an email until tomorrow. That's probably less critical in my opinion than the actual experience on the ride itself. But with the Zwift snafus out of the way, let's talk about my experience with the ride. Climber's Gambit is a decent course. Perfect World, I'd probably reorder those segments a little bit. Right now you've got the middle segment at the beginning, you have the sprint in the middle, and then you have the long segment at the end. There isn't a course that's really oriented the way that I would like to see it done. I feel like the sprint should be oriented at the end of the ride. Granted, you might be pre-fatigued for that sprint, but you can also go all out on the sprint. Understand that you do not have to put in another effort. When you put a sprint in the middle, you still know you have a long effort left to go. Now, my experience with sprinting on Zwift, I can't get anywhere near my power execution on the road. I'm at least 200 to 250 watts shy of my 25-second sprint out on the road. That's okay. I understand it. You don't get the bike throw indoors, but you can still compare apples to apples on Zwift to see if your indoor seated or standing sprints on an indoor trainer are improved. Now, from my experience on the day, I was a little bit flat today. My sleep wasn't the best. Ideally, if you're going to go into a ride like this, go in well rested with a decent amount of nutrition. You're going to be burning a decent amount of sugar on a ride like this, so make sure that you're topped up on fuel. I could tell early on that I was feeling a little bit flat. Probably could have done a little bit longer of a warm-up. I did about 6 minutes in the pen, and then to get to the first segment was somewhere around the 7-minute mark before I hit the Titans Grove reverse, and I could tell when doing that anaerobic segment, I was a lot flatter than I usually am at that level power. I was hoping for something closer to about 90 seconds, and I ended up first loser at about 152. The best time was like 133. I was hoping closer to the 130 mark, but at least I was sub 2 minutes, which I'm perfectly happy with based on how I feel today. Now, between the Titans Grove reverse climb and then the first sprint, you get a decent amount of rest in between, especially if you keep the power low. It gets a little lumpy in the Titans Grove area. Just shift down, use a light gear. I saw a lot of people keeping things kind of 2.5 watts per kilogram and above. Just based on the execution and the segments, that was probably a tempo level power for some of those girls on the road. I was on the women's only ride. I think that if you're a little bit more cognizant of this is just recovery, even if you have to turn your trainer difficulty down for that segment of the course, I recommend that you do that. Remove some of the forced feedback from the trainer if you can't shift down to a low enough gear to keep a light spin, because you're trying to flush that lactate, and depending on your level of fitness, those little rollers might be forcing you into a low enough cadence that you're still burning up those fast twitch muscle fibers. You're trying to rest those. So keep it light, keep it easy, and then slowly add in a little bit more power as you've fully recovered. But you should have plenty of time to fully recover between the first segment and then the sprinting segment. Now, the sprinting segment, you're going to come around a couple of corners. If you're not super familiar with the course, make sure that you're paying attention to the prompts. They give you a couple of prompts to let you know when the arch is coming, but you don't see the arch until you kind of come around a left-hand bend. So make sure that when you're coming around that bend that you have time to start lifting up that power, so you're not just dumping a ton of gears. I screwed up a little bit. I don't think I ramped up my power quite enough. I probably could have gotten the first place time. I lost a second to the first place finisher, but if I had come in with a little bit more speed and a little bit more power and then held what I had held through that segment, I probably could have tied, if not beaten, that sprint on the road. I was somewhere around the 25-second mark. So you can get a little better time by timing your sprint a little bit better. I didn't time it all that great, but I didn't really have much more to push either. So I'm perfectly content with what I had on the day. Then between the sprint and the Volcano KOM, again, you have plenty of time to fully recover, drop down that trainer difficulty if you need to, spin real easy, make sure you fully recover from that sprint, and prepare for a decent length climb. Now, today I did not give that effort a full effort personally for two reasons. One, I was flat on the day, I just didn't have it. And two, I thought I was going to jump into the workout right afterwards, workout number one, the aerobic workout. I ended up scrapping that idea altogether because I sucked today. It is what it is. It wasn't a great day for me to do the baseline ride, but I'm really doing these to make these videos first and foremost because I've done the academy before. I'm not competing for the pro contract, so there's nothing lost for me to give it the effort that I have on the day. So I ended up doing my effort between 90 and 100% of my FTP, mostly around that high sweet spot area and then building up closer to my threshold towards the end. I ideally would have done that entire effort at my threshold or above my threshold. It ended up taking me about 9 minutes and 10 seconds. That is not by any means my PR on that climb, but I just knew early on that I just didn't have it. That's okay. I think the record for the segment on the day was like 7:45, something to that extent. The woman who did get the QOMs in all three of the segments was part of a Zwift racing team, so I don't feel bad coming second fiddle to somebody like that. I'd like to think that on a better day, I could be within striking distance of those results, but today I didn't have it. Now, to put things into perspective, I think I averaged that last climb somewhere around 3.8 watts per kilogram, and that's what got me around 9 minutes and 10 seconds. So take that for what it is, not a flex by any stretch of the imagination, just to put into context for you what that type of wattage is going to return in terms of time on the day, where watts per kilogram on those particular gradients is really going to reign supreme. So if you find yourself quite a bit lower, just understand what you're going to execute and for how long. You can kind of make some extrapolations on your own, but if you're somewhere between 3.5 and 4 watts per kilogram, think somewhere between 7:30 and 10 minutes, and then if you're quite a bit lower than that, you might think beyond 10 minutes, just so that you can pace yourself accordingly. We are all where we are. You can execute that segment however you want, and depending how long that segment's going to take you and what your watts per kilogram is, that's going to drive what level of effort you are. For me, it could have been a threshold or even VO2 max level effort because I have the watts per kilogram to do it. For you, it might be a tempo to threshold level effort because you might be lower in your watts per kilogram. It just depends on where you are in your riding, but hopefully that will help you to make some appraisals as to how hard you should go out. Ideally, start conservative and then work your way up and try to negative split the climb. I did mention in my post that I saw something kicking around on the forums from Zwift that they were going to let people choose whatever bike they wanted. And in the pen, it looked like you could choose whatever bike you wanted. I had initially chosen the Specialized as a climbing bike, and I was just going to use the same bike for both the baseline and finish line rides. But then once the course started, I was on the Canyon Air Road. And then interestingly enough, they had set it up that at the segment start, you actually flipped to the TT bike. I thought that was an interesting choice versus just locking you into the TT bike for the entire ride, but it was executed well. It worked. There wasn't any weird glitchiness. I went directly from one bike to the other, but I like the fact that everybody was on the same bike. I don't know why they just didn't use the Canyon Air Road for the entire course, but it's going to make it a lot easier for you to fairly compare yourself to other folks on the road if that matters to you. Sometimes it does. There's always going to be people out there that are weight doping or doing things unscrupulous on the bike, but if you're looking just in terms of the averages on the day, you can probably make some decent suppositions knowing everybody's on the same bike, and where you are against everyone else could be valuable information for you. The one thing I find that's interesting, and this is just endemic to group workouts in general, is they have a ranking on the road. So it tells you what your place is on the road, and I'm not really sure that that's beneficial. Granted, it's part of the program, it's part of the way that it's always been, but I never understood the purpose on a group workout of having those rankings, because I know some of the ladies that were on that road in between segments were probably looking at their ranking on the road, and people can't help but be competitive. It's hard to ignore that, oh, I'm 6th on the road. Can I catch that next person? When you really should just be focusing on recovering. Now, if you're looking to catch that next carrot up in front of you when you're on the climb to eke a little bit more power out of yourself, great. But I wish that they would just completely get rid of that, but it's baked into the code right now. It's fine, it is what it is. But for you, don't pay any attention to your rankings on the road. That means absolutely nothing. Focus only on the segments themselves and be the best at recovering between those segments. So, high-level overview. How can you best prepare for this course? First of all, block out about an hour and a half. The fastest I saw somebody finish this course is about the 45 to 48 minute mark, and it depends on how fast you're going between the segments. I was just under an hour, about 56 minutes, and I was going pretty slow, like 75 watts in between the segments and recovering pretty slowly. But give yourself up to about 90 minutes. You're not racing the course. This is just so that you know how many minutes do you have available. Do I have time to do the baseline ride? Make sure that you have 90 minutes. You'll probably do it in less. Next thing, be well rested. Don't do what I did. Be on a good night's sleep. Make sure that you're properly nourished throughout the day. This is not the day to fast into your workout. Try to fuel the best that you can for your lunch or dinner, whatever you're doing before your workouts. Make sure that you have glucose on board. This is a workout that is going to burn sugars. This is not an endurance or fat burning workout. So take sugars while you're on the bike, whether it's through gels, chews, in your drink bottle, real food, whatever it is you're going to do, but make sure that you have enough sugar on board. To put things into perspective, that ride for me, it was about 70 TSS with really easy recovery valleys, a 2-minute anaerobic effort for the first segment, a 25-second sprint level effort, and about a 9-minute sweet spot level effort for me. So your mileage is going to vary, but think that you're going to be somewhere between 60 and about 90 TSS depending on your execution and how long it takes you to do those efforts. Make sure that you're fueling appropriately. Again, your caloric burn may vary, but make sure that you're bringing calories on board. Expect anywhere between 400 and up to 1,200 calories in the hour, depending on your raw wattage. So fuel appropriately. Keep an eye on those prompts. Make sure that you know when the segments are coming. If you haven't done this course before, pre-riding it could help, but I don't think it's necessary with those on-screen prompts. Just make sure that you're keeping an eye out for those things. When it comes to the entire course, ride your own ride. Only be competing with others when you're going for those PRs on those segments. And last but most certainly not least, have fun. This is for you. This is the baseline ride. This is to give you an appraisal as to kind of where you stand right now. And hopefully at the end of the 4 weeks, you'll see some improvements. You'll learn to do the segments a little bit better, both from a power execution standpoint and from a strategy standpoint. Go for those gains. Enjoy yourself, learn a lot from this academy. I'll be covering these workouts in the days to come. Feel free to ask any questions down in the comments below. Please hit that thumbs up button if you've got any value out of this video. It does help to get this out in front of other people for whom it might be helpful. And as always, I will catch you lovely endurance nerds in the next one. See ya.